Kia ora, good morning. Welcome to the Eye in the Sky Show podcast. So today I would like to talk about the ancient alien wars of China. I just found out about this morning, and it immediately piqued my interest because, anything to do with aliens, honestly, it's like it seems to be the go-to answer for everything at the moment. If you don't know what it is, it's got to be aliens. When I was listening to the video, I knew as soon as he started talking and describing the transcripts and what had been written at the time about this 500-year war. I knew what it was. So basically, around about 30 BC. There's supposedly supposed to have been an alien invasion in China, where these star people came down from the sky and enslaved the Chinese people and forced them to build pyramids and worked their cattle to farm the lands and all that sort of thing. And they found in the 1980s in the ruins of I really hope I don't mispronounce this. I'm going to do my best, but don't be offended. In the Sanxingdui ruins, Sanxingdui, in the San Kingdom of China, they found some burial mounds. They found, like they already knew that the city was there, the ancient city was there because they knew about it in the 1920s, but in the 1980s they found these two burial ritual pits, and it was full of like gold and bronze and jade, and they started uncovering like all these ancient writings talking about these alien wars and how the aliens were described as having like no hair on their heads, wearing gold masks that had these antennas poking out. They found these statues, these bronze statues, and that where they had like these elongated heads and bronze masks, and they a Japanese man apparently, got some artist to do a drawing and a writing of everything that he remembered he saw of this scene in alien craft, and they were talking about how they had like lights, like shining lights. They came down in shining lights, and they had these. Basically, they thought that these alien craft came down with aliens and they invaded them for 500 years, and they were being enslaved and treated really badly, and so were their animals. Like, they used their animals to plow the lands and force them to build these pyramids, and they had these three tentacled heads, and they had these masks over their face to help them breathe, and it was all written down on tortoiseshell and like paper and silk, like papyrus, and silk and that. And then these 12-foot red-headed giants came out of nowhere, came from the northwest and saved them and fought the aliens, and the aliens ran away and never came back. And I started laughing because I was like, oh God, here we go. So basically, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna put links in the description box below so that you can check it all out yourself. But I'm just gonna give you a quick rundown on what it is we're dealing with here. And all my links in the description box are going to corroborate everything I said, like the time scale, the times with which all these things were happening, corroborate each other, like the time scale and everything that I'm putting in the description box matches. So basically, what we're looking at is because the Nile River apparently runs from Egypt right through to China. So it is believed, it is pretty much the general consensus that the Egyptians the Chinese are descendants from the Egyptians, like most of us are. Māori people are. It's even believed in Irish Celtic mythology that the Irish and the Scottish are descendants of the Egyptians, and that there was an Egyptian pharaoh whose daughter was named Scotia, and she lent her name to Scotland because Scotland is Scotia. Scotia means Scotland, like Nova Scotia in Canada is named after, that means New Scotland. And apparently, the pharaoh's daughter lent her name to Scotia when they migrated, but this is unsubstantiated. This is as general consensus is this is just a myth. Um, she apparently married a husband whose name I can't remember, but basically they say that he lent his name to calling them, how they speak Gaelic, or they're Gaels. His name was Gail. It's in the description box. I'm so sorry because that's not my main focal point, so I didn't take that into my brain as much. But because it's uncorroborated myth. Um, but anyway, Cleopatra was around at the time. So was Julius Caesar, and so were the Celts and the Picts. Now, what I'm going to suggest to you is the poor Chinese, they must have thought, what the deuce? I think what happened was the Egyptians followed the Nile River to China and invaded China. And that they were trying, because it was at the time when they were trying to expand their empire. Now, the reason why I say this is for a lot of reasons. First, they had the elongated heads at the time. They shaved their heads. It was part of their, keeping clean. They were the ones that invented shaving. So the high priests and high priestesses and that would shave their heads so that they were bald. And they were described as being, being hairless. And some of them were described as having like alien heads. And of course, the Egyptians would bind their heads to give them that, that bulbous head look. They wore gold masks apparently to help them breathe. Now, the thing is that the Egyptians were obsessed with gold. They probably went to China as well while they were conquering the lands to build their pyramids to establish, their territory for their gods and their pharaohs. And they were obsessed with gold, so they were mining the gold. They took gold with them because gold wasn't just used, to show wealth and, for rituals and that. They used to wear gold masks because gold is really good for your skin, and Cleopatra especially was exceedingly vain. The rich women and that and the people of high honor would, they invented makeup, they invented eye makeup, and like eyeliner and eyeshadow and lipstick and all that. Like, they were exceedingly vain. The rich Egyptians were exceedingly vain. And gold, they would wear gold masks for balls and for rituals. Even like to bury their dead, they would put gold masks on them because it preserved your skin. It was really, really good for your skin. It's really good to put gold on your skin because, it's anti-inflammatory, it's antibacterial, it's a regenerative metal, and it's really, really good for your skin. And so I think these gold masks were, the Egyptians wearing either their ritual masks, burial masks, or, for beauty. It was also they wore them. I think Cleopatra used to wear them, when they had like parties and things. She would, because it was a show of wealth, but it also, she believed that her looks were everything. And I think that this is why they were wearing the gold mask. And if I'm going to put in the cover photo of this podcast, you're going to see examples of what I'm talking about. But I've put the original pictures, the links of them in the description box. But you'll see clearly a lot of Egyptian headdresses where you see what look like three tentacles. There's one for a woman where she's got three like strands of gold coming off the back of her headdress with stars on them. And so I think, you know, when they said they wore these helmets that had these tentacles coming out of them with masks that they could breathe, I think it was just the Egyptians showing off their gold and their wealth and their stature, because that's what they liked to do. You know, they knew the importance of gold. It was an easy metal to work with as well, and I think that's one of the reasons why they went to China, was to mine the gold and expand their kingdoms, and, you know, try and conquer China. And then I think what happened was the Irish came along, the Celts. And the reason why I say Celts, it was probably more than likely the Picts as well, the Gaels, the Irish and the Scottish, possibly. See, the reason why I say this is because that the red hair, they said they were 12-foot giants with flaming red hair, and that they were dressed in leather armour, which, you know, the Celtics, the Celts, the Celts and the Picts, their armour was, you know, they had the leather straps and all that sort of thing. But also there could be a bit of Gael in there, in the fact that what happened was the Vikings, when they invaded Spain, they had integrated with the Spanish and had offspring. And through the Vikings having children with the Spaniards, there was a genetic mutation in their children that created the red hair and blue eyes. So if you have red hair or blue eyes in your family, chances are you have Spanish and Viking ancestors somewhere in your genetic makeup, because the red hair and blue eyes was never seen prior to the Vikings invading Spain. And then what happened was there was some kind of war or conflict, and there was a mass migration to Ireland, where, you know, the first king of Ireland, you know, established himself, and he had the red hair and the blue eyes, and it just kind of spread from there. I dye my hair black, but I am red-haired and blue-eyed, and obviously my last name is Callaghan. It was when I was looking into the Callaghan family history that I discovered we actually have a Spanish background, and I'm 6 feet tall, and, you know, the height comes from the Vikings and that, because they pillaged all their land, so they fed well. And apparently, if you are if you are physically tall, you were from the races of people that were really good at pillaging lands. And, you know, like the Goths and the Gauls and the Celts and the Picts and that, they're all, you know, really strong people, because they were known for, you know, invading lands and taking their resources and living like champions, and, you know, and so they grew big and tough and strong. And it said that if you're smaller in stature, you're from people who didn't feel the need to pillage other people's lands, and that, you know, you are better able at conserving energy and storing food. So you know, like, you're less heathenistic. You're less uncouth. You're more couth than us giant flaming redheads. In fact, Callaghan, the name Callaghan means the fiery one. So, you know, so I just, what is interesting is that, and it caught my interest as well, in the fact that they said that they were writing things on silk and papyrus. And what you need to remember, which gives more credence to my hypothesis that it was an Egyptian invasion, is because of the fact it was the Egyptians that invented paper and ink and the pen. You know, the the ink pen and paper and ink, black ink. The Egyptians invented all of that. They invented the shaving of the head, and also when they said that they even enslaved their beasts. You know, when they were building their pyramids and doing their agriculture and that there, and doing their mining and stuff of the lands. um, the Egyptians invented the harnesses for oxen, and that they were the ones who invented the concept of hitching oxen and that up to harnesses, and using them to like tend to the agriculture and that. So everything that the Chinese are using to explain this so-called alien invasion were all things and tools that they would have learnt and gotten from the aliens that invaded them. Um, so it's really interesting. Now the thing is that at the time all this was going on, the Romans were getting ready to invade Britain. There was about to be Julius Caesar was getting ready to invade Britain, and I think possibly what happened was there was a Celtic army, like a Celtic Pictish army, that maybe went to look for allies, or because the Egyptians, because Cleopatra was there, um, and she was with Julius Caesar at the time, I think because they were looking to expand their horizons and grow their empire. um, I think her influence was taken to China with the aliens, because the Egyptians wanted to be like their rulers at the time. And then I think what happened was, as the Celts and the Picts were fighting the Romans, because the Celtic lands went as far as Turkey. Like the Celts were evident, their empires basically went as far as the Turkish border. Now the thing is, if you look at Turkey on a map, all you have to do is go through Iran and Afghanistan and Pakistan, and you're right there in China. So I think during this invasion of the Romans to Britain, and the counter attack of the Celts and Picts defending their lands and trying to also expand their territories, because it sounds like it was a territorial war, battle of the kingdoms. They found their way to China and fought the Egyptians there, to protect the Celts and to protect the Chinese, and possibly try and either do trade with the Chinese, which we know they did do. They did bring a lot of things back. It's also interesting to note that they found pottery in these pits as well, and the Egyptians invented pottery. They were the ones that came up with the concept of turning clay into pots and stuff to keep their oils and store their food in. So they took a lot of things with them to China that the Chinese were using to describe this alien invasion. I think that the lights they were talking about is the fact that at the time, we know for a fact, with my podcast about the dendrolites and the fact that the pyramids emit electricity. Cleopatra was responsible for finishing the completion of, or one part of, the Temple of Hathor, where the dendrolite is on the wall. And I think that the lights that they're talking about is the fact that the Egyptians were well versed in using electricity by that point, and they were putting them in their pyramids. This we know for a fact. And because the poor Chinese wouldn't have had a clue what was going on when these giants and these skinny bald people turned up, using this technology that they didn't have a clue about. It would have been completely alien to them, and that's where the term alien comes from. It just means from unknown lands. It doesn't mean, that's why you call them illegal aliens, or I'm an alien from another country. The term alien just means from foreign or unknown lands. It doesn't mean comes from outer space. It means foreign or unknown. So, so I think the poor Chinese were tormented and saved by both sides of my ancestry. And I think that's really what it was. But in their lack of understanding of what was going on, I think they tried their best to try and talk about these, these like spaceship like things, which could have been like the template to things like the Baghdad battery. Now remember, like, all this stuff was coming over as these um, armies and that were bringing all their technology and gadgets and that with them. And if you're turning up with this kind of technology that you'd never even seen before, that the concept of which was just so foreign and alien to you, you're going to assume that it came from outer space, because that's all they would have known at the time. So it's just, like I keep saying, you don't have to believe anything I'm saying, but I really think I'm right on this. I'll put the links in the description box below so you can look at all the different headdress gears and that the Egyptians were using and wearing at the time, as well as the face masks. And there's even like an actual gold mask, like in a museum. There's just like the slab of gold, and they've like, turned it into a mask. It's just amazing to see. So, I mean, it's not funny because they were enslaved, but like, it's funny in the fact that, I mean, what are my people like? Eh? This is why I'm so stubborn and determined in getting my own justice in that, because my blood runs rife with troublemakers. Anyway, I'm going to let you go and have another coffee. Links in the description box below. I will speak to you later. And China, oh my lord, I'm so sorry. On behalf of my ancestors, I'm sorry. And behalf of my other ancestors, you're welcome. Oh, bless your hearts. Oh, bless. I'll speak to you later. Mwah.